Imagine waking up and realizing something is terribly wrong. You can still think, you can still feel, you can still hear the people around you, but you cannot move your body because your head has been cut off. And now, while one vampire is being held captive in a butcher shop, another is being carried across Montreal inside a bowling bag. That is how the season finale of the Vampire Lestat begins. And somehow, this is only the beginning, because episode 7, titled The Failures, is not really about whether Lestat will survive. It is about whether Lestat can finally face the truth about his life, the people he loved, the people he destroyed, the people who destroyed him, and the question that has followed him for centuries: was Lestat Deliancourt a failure? The answer may surprise you. We pick up immediately after the shocking events of the previous episode. Lestat and Louis have finally reunited. After centuries of love, betrayal, violence, separation, and emotional damage, the two vampires are finally back together. But they barely have time to enjoy it, because Armand and Daniel have a different plan. The two vampires are beheaded. Louis is taken by Armand. Lestat's head is handed over to Daniel, and this is where things become completely surreal. Daniel places Lestat's severed head inside a bowling bag. Yes, a bowling bag. Then he carries it through Montreal, and somehow this may be one of the most humiliating situations Lestat has ever experienced. And that is saying something. But while Daniel is walking around with Lestat's head, Lestat's mind begins to drift somewhere else. He finds himself walking through a forest, and the strangest part? It is daytime. Lestat is surrounded by trees. Waiters move through the forest carrying silver trays, and in the distance is a table, a long table. This table has appeared throughout the season, sometimes in memories, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in images that seemed impossible to understand. But now Lestat is finally sitting at it, and the table is filled with people from his life. At first, he sees younger versions of himself, the boy he once was, the teenager he once was, the people who helped shape him before he became a vampire. But then the world changes. The forest disappears, and suddenly Lestat is inside Magnus's tower. Now the table is filled with his vampire family. Magnus is at the head, Gabriella is there, Nicki is there, Louis is there, Antoinette is there, and Claudia's chair is empty. Lestat immediately notices. He asks where she is, and the answer is simple. Claudia has already said everything she needed to say. She has already confronted Lestat. She does not owe him another conversation simply because he is dying. And that empty chair becomes incredibly important, because this is not Claudia's trial. This is Lestat's. Above the table is a countdown. Lestat's head can only remain separated from his body for so long. Every second is disappearing. And while his physical body is slowly dying, his mind begins putting his entire life on trial. The people around the table are not there to comfort him. They are there to judge him. They begin listing his failures, his failed relationships, his failed leadership, his failed responsibilities as a maker, his failures as a son, his failures as a lover, his failures as a vampire. And Lestat is forced to sit there and listen. The show describes the process as the consumption of his soul, piece by piece, memory by memory, failure by failure. It feels like a supernatural trial, but there is something even more interesting happening, because all of these people are inside Lestat's mind, which means that in a way, this entire trial is Lestat judging himself. The people around the table are projections of how he believes they would judge him. Magnus, Gabriella, Nicki, Louis, Antoinette. Every person represents a different piece of Lestat's history, and every one of them has something to say. Magnus begins the proceedings, but Lestat quickly realizes that Magnus has no right to judge him. After all, Magnus kidnapped him, tortured him, turned him into a vampire, and then burned himself alive. Magnus had known Lestat for barely any time at all, yet somehow he still believes he understands him. And then there is Gabriella, Lestat's mother, the one person who seems determined to defend him, which is ironic, because Gabriella is also one of the biggest reasons Lestat became the person he is. Lestat eventually suggests that Gabriella should take over the trial, and this is where the episode begins digging into the darkest part of his childhood, because one memory refuses to stay buried: the witch's place. When Lestat was a child, Gabriella took him to watch young women accused of witchcraft being burned alive. One of those girls was close to Lestat's age, and the memory has never truly left him. For years, Lestat remembered it as another example of Gabriella's cruelty, but now as he is dying, he finally asks her why she did it, and her answer is disturbing. She wanted him to understand the world. She wanted him to see what the village was capable of. She wanted him to understand that staying there would destroy him. In Gabriella's mind, this was love, a twisted kind of love, but love nonetheless. And this is where Lestat begins to understand something horrifying. He did not simply inherit Gabriella's trauma, he inherited her methods. Because years later, Lestat did something very similar to Claudia. He forced Claudia to watch Charlie's body burn. He believed she needed to see the consequences of what she had done, just as Gabriella believed Lestat needed to see the cruelty of the world. The message is devastating. The trauma does not disappear. It moves through the bloodline, from mother to son, from maker to fledgling, from one generation to the next. And Lestat suddenly realizes that he became the very thing he hated. But what happens next changes everything, because while Lestat is confronting the ghosts of his life, Louis is facing one of his own. And this time, Louis is not inside his own mind. He is literally trapped on a butcher's block.
Louis is alive. Barely. His head has been separated from his body, but because of the powerful blood inside him, he remains conscious. He can still think. He can still communicate. He can even write. And despite being in one of the most horrifying situations imaginable, Louis is still Louis. He curses at Armand. He refuses to apologize, and he makes it very clear that being decapitated has not improved his mood. Armand, however, is not interested in killing Louis, at least not immediately. He wants something else. He wants an apology. Throughout the season, Armand has been making what he calls his amends. He has been confronting people from his past, trying to reconcile, trying to admit his mistakes, trying to repair the damage he has caused. But there is one person missing, Louis, and Armand has been waiting for this moment. So now, with Louis's head sitting in front of him, Armand begins speaking. He says he has spent years having intense conversations with himself. He explains what Louis did to him. He explains how abandoned he felt, how humiliated he felt, how much of their relationship he believes was built on lies. And Armand wants Louis to admit his part in the destruction. But there is a problem. Louis does not agree. Louis refuses to give Armand the apology he wants, and Armand becomes increasingly frustrated, because this is not really about an apology. It is about being seen. Armand believes Louis never truly understood what he sacrificed for him. He believes he spent decades trying to remain beside Louis, trying to earn forgiveness, trying to repair a relationship that was already built on a lie. And in Armand's mind, he wasted nearly a century. That time matters to him, so he believes Louis owes him something. But Louis still refuses. Then Armand reveals the truth about Regina, and this is one of the biggest twists of the episode. Louis believed meeting Regina was a coincidence. She looked like Claudia. She appeared in his life at exactly the moment he was vulnerable. But it was not fate. It was Armand. Armand found Regina. He studied her. He manipulated her. He arranged the entire encounter. He gave her the words she needed to say. He created a living reminder of Claudia, and then he placed that reminder directly in front of Louis. The entire thing was a trap. Armand did not simply hurt Louis once. He spent months creating an emotional weapon, and now he uses Regina again. Armand threatens her life. He tells Louis that he must finally make amends, or Regina will die. And suddenly Louis has no choice. But before Louis apologizes, Armand reveals one more devastating truth. He tells Louis that he never truly loved him. Their relationship was partly a cover, a way for Armand to remain close to Daniel, a way to observe Daniel. Even Louis's relationships with other men became part of Armand's plan. Armand allowed certain things to happen because Louis's guilt made him easier to control. In other words, Armand played Louis for decades, and then he admits that the Paris trial was also a trap. He wanted Louis dead. He even admits that he enjoyed the visual drama of it, because of course Armand would describe murder like a piece of theater. But now Louis finally speaks, and what he says completely changes the mood of the scene. Louis admits that Lestat is the love of his life. He admits that he never truly gave himself to Armand. He admits that the relationship they built was constructed on a lie. But then Louis does something unexpected. He begins talking about Armand's human past. The boy named Arun, the child who was sold into slavery, the child who was abused, the child who learned very early that survival meant becoming someone else. And Armand immediately stops the live stream, because this is too personal. For the first time, Louis is not simply attacking Armand. He is looking at the person beneath him. Louis tells Armand that he understands why he became so damaged, but he does not excuse what Armand has done. That distinction is crucial. Louis is not saying, "You are innocent." He is saying, "I understand how you became this way." And then he delivers the line that breaks Armand. Louis tells him that he once saw the good in him, and Armand collapses emotionally. The monster disappears for a moment, and we see the frightened child underneath. Armand has spent centuries trying to fill an emptiness inside himself, with covens, with relationships, with control, with ritual, with power. But Louis finally gives him something he has wanted all along: recognition. Someone sees Arun, not just Armand, and that is enough. Armand releases Regina. He lets Louis go. But before leaving, he carves his initial into Louis's chest, because apparently even emotional healing has to come with a signature. Meanwhile, something strange is happening elsewhere. Daniel still has Lestat's head, and Daniel is furious. For an entire season, Lestat has talked down to him, mocked him, humiliated him. Daniel has been treated like an inconvenience, And now, for once, Daniel has control. Lestat is literally in a bowling bag. Daniel can finally say everything he has wanted to say, and he does. But then Alex arrives, and something feels wrong. He is too quiet, too calm. He talks about the concert, and Daniel realizes something is happening. Then Raglan, James, and the Talamasca arrive. They want Lestat, not because they care about saving him, because they need the concert to happen. And Daniel suddenly understands. He was never in control. He was simply being used. The Talamasca has been manipulating the entire Great Conversion. Lestat's music was not just music. It was part of a larger plan. The song Make More helped encourage vampires around the world to create more vampires. And now the world is filling with them. Raglan reveals that the vampire population has exploded. Thousands, then hundreds of thousands. The Great Conversion is already underway, and the concert is the next step. Daniel refuses to cooperate. He is angry. He is tired of being manipulated. And just as Daniel finally decides to fight back, the episode cuts away, leaving the audience wondering what happened next. And now the most important question remains. What is happening inside Lestat's mind? Because Lestat's trial is about to reach its final act. Back at the long table, the judgment continues. Lestat's failures keep piling up. His relationships, his decisions, his cruelty, his arrogance, his selfishness, his inability to stop performing. Everyone has something to say, and the countdown continues. His time is running out. But then something unexpected happens. Lestat begins to laugh. Not because he is happy, because the entire situation has suddenly become ridiculous. His entire life is being reduced to a list of failures, a ledger, a collection of mistakes. And Lestat realizes something. The people judging him are also failures. Magnus failed him. Gabriella failed him. Nicki failed him. Louis failed him. He failed them. Everyone at the table is broken. Everyone has made terrible choices. Everyone has hurt someone. So why should Lestat be the only one judged? And suddenly the trial changes. Lestat grabs the countdown timer and throws it away. The trial is over. The judgment is over. The audience is still there. So Lestat does what Lestat does best. He turns the entire thing into a performance. He climbs onto the table and begins speaking to the room. He addresses everyone who has ever loved him, everyone who has ever hated him, everyone who has ever suffered because of him, everyone who has ever been murdered by him. And he tells them they should be grateful, because they were all connected to him. They were part of his story, and he was part of theirs. It is pure Lestat. The arrogance, the humor, the theatricality, but underneath it all is something new. Acceptance. Lestat finally looks at his life and says, maybe I did fail, but I also tried. And if failure proves anything, it proves that he attempted something. He loved, he created, he performed, he fought, he survived, and he did everything at full volume. Then Lestat speaks about the people he loved. He admits that his love was often grotesque, often selfish, often destructive, but it was real. And for the first time, he does not try to make his love sound beautiful. He does not try to make himself innocent. He simply admits the truth. He loved people badly, but he loved them, and maybe that is enough. Then, as Lestat's life flashes before him, someone unexpected appears. Paul, Louis' brother. Paul died at the beginning of the story, but now he appears to Lestat. Is he a hallucination? A supernatural vision? A glimpse of something beyond death? The episode does not give us a clear answer, and that uncertainty makes the moment even more powerful. Paul tells Lestat something Louis has never been able to say. Louis struggles to express love, but that does not mean he does not feel it. Paul also thanks Lestat for loving Louis, not perfectly, not safely, but in the way Louis needed to be loved. And suddenly, the entire emotional story of Louis and Lestat comes into focus. Their relationship has been violent, painful, destructive, but it has also been filled with enormous love. They have spent centuries trying to escape each other, only to keep finding their way back. And then Lestat sees something above him, a vast web of light, silver threads stretching across the darkness, connecting vampires around the world. This is the sacred core, the invisible connection shared by the vampire race. And Lestat looks at it in awe. He is no longer simply looking at his own life. He is seeing the entire supernatural world. And this moment feels like a doorway, a hint of what comes next, because Lestat is about to become connected to something far larger than himself. Then, the light disappears. Lestat wakes up. His head has been reattached to his body. He is alive. And for the first time in the entire season, Lestat does not want to perform. He does not want to go on stage. He does not want the concert. He has just faced everything, and suddenly the music feels meaningless. But the world does not care what Lestat wants. Gabriella is waiting. Raglan is waiting. Thousands of vampires are waiting. The concert must happen, and this is where Lestat finally confronts Lestat with her mother. For most of his life, Gabriella has been almost impossible for Lestat to see clearly. He worshipped her, defended her, wanted her approval, even when she hurt him. But now, after confronting his entire life, something has changed. Lestat finally sees Gabriella as she really is. Not the mother he wished she could be, not the woman he imagined, but the woman she actually is. And he calls her a monster. It is one of the most important moments of Lestat's character development, because for the first time he stops making excuses for her. He stops defending her. He stops trying to earn her love. He sees the truth. and the truth is devastating. But then the show does something bold. It does not show us the concert that has been teased all season, the event that could change the world. We do not see it. Instead, the story jumps forward, and the result is horrifying.
Lestat is now recording his confession, the same confession that has been driving the entire season. He sits inside his home, and outside the window, the world is gone. Montreal has been destroyed. The landscape is devastated. Buildings are gone. The city looks like it has been through a war, and Lestat is standing in the middle of it all. The world has been transformed, and then he says the words that change the meaning of the entire season. The fault is his, all of it. At first, Lestat had tried to suggest that he was only partly responsible, that other people manipulated him, that the Talamasca designed the Great Conversion, that Gabriella pushed him toward the stage, that Akasha was involved, and all of those things may be true, but Lestat still accepts responsibility because he knew his music had power. He knew his influence was dangerous. He knew vampires were multiplying. He knew the world was changing, and he still performed. That is the tragedy. Lestat was manipulated, but he was not powerless. The Talamasca helped create the plan. Gabriella helped push him toward the concert. Akasha may have awakened and transformed the event into an apocalypse, but Lestat was still the person standing on the stage, and he chose to perform. That is why he ultimately blames himself. The apocalypse may not be entirely his fault, but he refuses to hide behind that fact. And this is what makes the ending so powerful. The season began with Lestat trying to control his story. He wanted to tell his own version. He wanted to reclaim his image. He wanted to turn his life into music. But by the end, he finally understands that telling your story does not mean controlling how people interpret it. You can explain yourself. You can confess. You can admit the truth, but you cannot control the consequences. Lestat spent centuries trying to become the author of his own legend, and now he is forced to accept that the legend has consequences. The final image is almost cruelly beautiful. Lestat has finally made peace with himself. He has accepted that he is not perfect. He has accepted that he is not innocent. He has accepted that he is both victim and monster. And just as he reaches that acceptance, the world around him has been destroyed. He has found peace, but the world has paid the price. And that is the perfect tragedy of Lestat. He may finally understand himself, but understanding yourself does not erase what you have done. It only makes it impossible to keep pretending you did not do it. And that is what makes episode 7 so compelling. This was never simply a story about whether Lestat would survive. He does. It was never simply about whether Louis and Armand would reconcile. They don't exactly. It was never simply about whether the Great Conversion would happen. It already has. The real story was about accountability. Louis is forced to confront his emotional distance. Armand is forced to confront the damage caused by his manipulation. Daniel is forced to realize that he has been used. And Lestat is forced to confront the truth of his entire existence. Everyone is forced to look in the mirror, and nobody likes what they see. The episode also leaves several major questions for the future. What happened to Daniel after Raglan took Lestat? What exactly happened during the concert? How did Akasha awaken? What destroyed Montreal? What is the sacred core? And what role will the Talamasca play in the next chapter? Most importantly, is Lestat really responsible for the vampire apocalypse? Or is he simply taking the blame because he cannot bear to admit that other people controlled his life? That may be the central question going forward, because Lestat has spent his entire existence fighting for control, and now, even after everything, he may still be struggling to understand whether the choices he made were truly his own. But perhaps that is the point. Lestat was manipulated. Lestat was abused. Lestat was betrayed. Lestat was used. But he also manipulated. He also abused. He also betrayed. He also used people. The finale refuses to make him only one thing. He is not simply a victim. He is not simply a villain. He is not simply a tragic lover. He is all of those things at once. And that is why the title, The Failures, is so important. Because the finale is not only about Lestat's failures, it is about everyone's failures. Louis failed to love honestly. Armand failed to let go. Gabriella failed to protect her son. The Talamasca failed to control the monster it helped create. Daniel failed to realize how many people were using him. And Lestat failed. But he also tried. And maybe, in the end, that is the only defense he needs.
He loved, he lost, he hurt people, he was hurt, he survived. And when the entire world finally looked at him and asked what he had done, Lestat gave the only answer he could. The fault was mine. All mine. And perhaps that is the most honest thing he has ever said. So what did you think of the Vampire Lestat episode 7? Was Lestat truly responsible for the vampire apocalypse? Was Armand genuinely looking for forgiveness? And what do you think happened to Daniel after Raglan arrived? Let me know your theories in the comments.